Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to episode 15, pretty sure, of Find Music. Oh, yeah. I just love that large background. Well, our mission is to turn you on to music you may not already know, even if it's an artist you already know. In episode 14, Fred told us about some work that was done with the music of Tom Waits. Women sing Waits, and that's just a fascinating concept. It was obviously done with great care, and I remembered one of the names was Rosanne Cash. That's the daughter of Johnny Cash, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've heard her music before. Very good singer. As for this episode 15, I'm going to go with a band that you may or may not know. Bring up my collection. I got a screen share to do that. That's right. Here we go. All right. So probably the simplest one I can do today is start at the top of my list. There's a band called 3.2. And if you've heard of them, then you obviously know a lot about prog rock. Because the birth of 3.2 was way back in 1988. A band that was called 3. And those 3 members were getting distracted by the dog I'm sitting this week. Those 3 members were Robert Berry, who you may or may not have heard of, Keith Emerson, and Carl Palmer. So that gives you the big clue there. It's like an alternate iteration of Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, without the lake. And so they made one album. It was called 3, and it didn't do much. It had a single that really did not become a hit. I think the album was called To the Power of 3. I don't have it. Right? It wasn't worth keeping. I might get it later just for historical purposes, because there was a decent single. But the fascinating thing about all this is, here we are decades later, and unfortunately Keith Emerson committed suicide about 5 years ago. At the end of 2016, he committed suicide because he was distraught over his loss of the use of his hands to properly play keyboards. But before he died, he was working on a project with Robert Berry to do another 3 album, but then he passed away. So Robert Berry had this music and no Keith Emerson, and he wanted to pay tribute to Keith Emerson by finishing the album. So he did. And they called it 3.2 because it no longer featured Keith Emerson. It was a new iteration. So you see in my collection here, I've got 2 3.2 albums. So I'm going to open that up and show you that the first one came out in 2018. It was called The Rules Have Changed. And it's got 2 spectacular songs that started off. One by One, very epic song. And the beautiful thing Robert Berry has done is he's been faithful to the Keith Emerson keyboard sound. So these 2 albums, if you're an Emerson, Lake and Palmer fan, you're going to love the keyboards on these 2 albums. And to top it off, Robert Berry, he's a multi-instrumentalist. So he plays fantastic drums, and he's excellent at recording in the studio. The sound is spectacular. So I already mentioned One by One, the epic, and then there's one that's, I guess, was meant to attempt to be a single called Powerful Man. You can see the video on YouTube. And it's a good quality album. In fact, it's very indulgent in the sense that he really retained a lot of what Keith Emerson had done. So when you listen to the whole album, you're going to hear touches that just really, they make you think Keith Emerson, even though he doesn't actually play them. But what's fascinating beyond that is the new album that came out in 2021, got delayed by the pandemic. It's called Third Impression. Those are two words you've heard before on an Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, right? Carnival 9 has a third impression. So this album, it's even better. Hard to believe, but it's even better. And the first one is very good. Blows 3 out of the water, 3.2. Just excellent production. And in Third Impression, there is one recording on the album that does feature Keith Emerson's keyboards. It's the last track called Never. It's almost 9 minutes, a little bit over long. It's more to enjoy Keith's keyboards, really, than being an actual cogent song. But the rest of the album is full of good songs. The one that turned me on to 3.2 in the first place is called A Fond Farewell. Great video, really draws you in. Sound draws you in. The progginess of it draws you in. Yet it's only 4 minutes and 26 seconds, so it's something that could have been radio friendly if the radio was still the major means of getting our music. Alas, no more. Really now, the only way to get your music is to, you're on a streaming service and the streaming service suggests something similar, right? Or if you're on YouTube and you're hunting and it suggests something similar. And that's how I found A Fond Farewell. It suggested to me this track when I was listening to another iteration of Yes called Arc that came out with an album that sunk like a stone because it wasn't very good. It really wasn't very good. It was pretty, the words that come to mind are namby-pamby. It was pretty milquetoast. But because I was watching that video, YouTube suggested, oh, you should be watching A Fond Farewell. So I tried it, and it was everything that the Arc wasn't. Strong prog. Those Emerson keyboards just made me sing to the skies. It was really wonderful. So I bought the album, and I found out that there's some other good cuts on there. I highly recommend the first track, Top of the World. Nice 9-minute epic that's really well put together. I believe another single from this, or I should say YouTube track, is A Bond of Union. And that is also a very good song, well put together. He knows how to put together a song that is not just prog. It has pop flavor. You might want to call it prog pop. That's a genre. And if you like prog pop, you might like these songs too. They're really good. I'm afraid to cut copyright a little here by playing a snip. I got in trouble the last 2 times. When I did the Charlatans, remember I did a half-hour episode practically. And I got cuffed and then they let me go because the Charlatans want to promote their new Greatest Hits album. And then last week I did Ian Hunter and I just played one snip of one song, busted. But again, luckily, they want to promote his catalog, right? Because Ian Hunter, I forgot to mention last week, he's in ill health. So I'm really, if I haven't said it before, I will rue the day Ian Hunter passes away because he's such a favorite of mine over the decades. And then just to conclude this episode, I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't heard 3.2 and you're a fan of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, do not hesitate to buy Third Impression. You're going to love it. And then go into the first album, The Rules Have Changed. That's how I did it. And I'm glad I did it that way because Third Impression is a better album than The Rules Have Changed. Still good album, but Third Impression is even better. You can see that I've got 2 favorites on the first album, and the second album I've got 3 favorites, and really it might even be more because there's some good tracks. The longer tracks tend to be really good. But they're all, on that first album, they're all kind of between 4 and 6 minutes anyway. And the same is pretty much true on the second album. Everything's between 3 and 9 minutes. So there's a bit more variance. All right, so that's my recommendation. 3.2, if you like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. 3.2 is your kind of thing. All right. All right. Let's stop that share. I didn't play any music at all. No trouble.